Hi guys, it's Terry here with Truth in Numbers. Good to see you again. Welcome to 2025. We're here. It's here. Here we go. We're going together, all in tow. So to start things off today, I wanted to mention the Smart List podcast. I just discovered it earlier this year. I feel a little late to the party, but I am enjoying listening in every week as I can to this podcast. If you're not familiar with it, it's three actors that we pretty much all know, and they're best friends. They yuck it up, and they have a guest each week that they interview, and that guest could be entertainment, science, music, etc. So lots of fun. And this last podcast that I listened to was they had a gentleman on whose name is Denis Villeneuve. He's the director of the Dune movies, the most recent ones. And I loved the book, Frank Herbert's book, and saw the first Dune movie when it came out, the one with Sting. And these two recent ones are amazing additions to the story and the legend, and the epicness of these movies were just fabulous, absolutely wonderful. And if you're familiar with the storyline, and I won't give anything away, but one of the aspects of the location, underlying issues in the film, is that the scarcity of water. And it's lovely to see all the things played out visually that you read about in the book, but to see all of the different ways that they conserve water and retain water and to reuse water, et cetera, quite a thing. And as we turn into 2025 and we meet these headwinds, it's going to require energy. And I think of this season that we're going into as a new section of a marathon that we're in. We've been in the marathon for years, and we're in another stage. We're going into the hilly part of the marathon. We thought the smaller hills were a thing, but now we're going to have some more. Some steeper hills to work with, or stronger headwinds, however you want to visualize that. And we're going to need energy reserves to get through this. So I was reminded again of that. I mentioned in a prior video how I had gone on an 80-mile bike ride when I was in college. And I was reminded of that same bike ride a little bit later on, a few miles further in. So that we turned north and gotten out of the crosswinds, and then as we turned somewhere between riding east and turning south, I missed the aid station for hydration and calorie intake. And so that as I was riding south with another 20 miles, at least 18, 20 miles left to go, I pulled over the side of the road and I just stopped because I could not move. And two people stopped by, and the gentleman, a young guy, stopped by, and he was basically said, hey, there's a gas station up a little further. You can either wait for the van to come and pick you up at the end of the race, or if you can make to the gas station, you can get something to eat, and you'll probably feel a lot better. So if I could avoid being picked up by the van, I always wanted to do that at all costs. So I got back on my bike and just was so slow getting to this filling station. And going in there, I just remember there wasn't any fruit. It was all junk food. And at that time, I wasn't eating any junk food. And the empty calories thing was not, it was something that I didn't want to, partake in. So I bought a Snickers bar. I just remember, I don't want to eat a Snickers bar, but I did, and it gave me energy. I got back, the rest of the miles down to campus, met up with my cousins, and we had a good time. So all that's to say is that there is something to be said at not missing the way stations in life, not missing the food stations, the replenishment stations in life. And think in this upcoming season of maybe some Dune level conservation when it comes to energy. So So that being said, I want to talk a little bit about resiliency. And so we'll pull all these things together here in a little bit, but popping over to resiliency, given this energy conservation thing, I have worked in infrastructure for years, and so that could be hospitals, um, that could be wastewater treatment plants or water treatment plants or other forms of infrastructure. But in working with engineers and end users for their facilities, we talk about building in redundancy and resiliency, redundancy for resiliency, and other measures to make sure that downtime is either eliminated or minimized. So it's the ability to eliminate downtime due to interruptions to service, eliminate downtime, and then when there is downtime, because there will be downtime, that's just part of life, that's just part of operations. But when there is downtime, to shorten the amount of time it takes to get back online. And that can also, I think, be applied not just to the mechanical and electrical world that I live in, but to this internal resiliency, energy conservation type topic that I'm bringing up today. So how can we prevent this bonking that I had when I was on the bike ride? I had been a runner and I knew about bonking, but I didn't. By the time that I really fully bonked, I was so limited that I couldn't connect the dots that I needed to eat. And so thankfully somebody came by and said, "Hey, lady, go eat, girl." I was a girl at that time. But all this to say is that, how do we prevent bonking? How do we prevent burning out? And when we do burn out, or when we do have, just get fried, how do we develop the skills and get strong enough and quick enough to be able to get back into the fight, in a reasonable amount of time, or whatever it takes. I mean, you take whatever time you got to take to get back into the fight, right? So, so there's a lot to be said about replenishing, on the every 20 miles or at every aid station, depending on what kind of ride or race you're thinking about. And I think I'm a person of faith, so I think of the 10 Commandments, where it says, remember the Sabbath to keep it holy. And it basically means a couple of things. One, that we set aside that day to be connected to God and have this kind of service to Him on that day. And that service to Him, set apartness for Him, which is the whole concept of holiness. And then also to rest. I mean, that's a very real part of the Sabbath day. And later on in Scripture, the Lord's really clear, where He says, the Sabbath day wasn't created for God. God doesn't need it. It's created for us, people. It's for us. And it's for us to stay aligned with Him and set apart for Him and with Him, but also to really physically rest. And if you get reductionist about the Scriptures and think of it as an owner's manual, then resting is very much a part of maintaining our well-being. So anyway, that's, given my worldview, I think highly of that, of the ancients in this regard. So thinking about resiliency and this internal resilience, could also be talked about in terms of an empowered navigation through chaos and the ability to make solid decisions, under pressures, under pressure-filled situations or stress-filled situations. And by conserving energy, we're building a foundation from which to be resilient. So with the backdrop of that, resiliency, etc., I want to move into another Headspace fundamental, which would be healthy detachment. So healthy detachment is a word that was coined or developed with respect to relationships. So it could be a toxic, dysfunctional relationship, or a dysfunctional dynamic within a relatively healthy relationship. And it's got two components to it. It's protecting self, but also showing genuine love and concern for the other in the relationship. And I mentioned healthy detachment because I think that we have a toxic, dysfunctional dynamic in our national discourse, or our national, political scene, etc. So I think it can apply on a broader scale. But let's go back to this, relationship thing, this personal relationship thing, and flesh that out and see what does that healthy detachment look like on that level. And to that end, I was reminded of a friend of mine years and years and years ago who was celebrating the moment that she moved into healthy detachment and out of more of a dysfunctional way of dealing with her husband. She was out for an evening with the girls, and she came home and found her husband drunk, asleep on the floor at the foot of the stairs. And she talked about this decision-making moment and this series of decisions that she made. And the first one was that she could get outraged, she could get upset, she could feel horrible, she could get angry with him, and just all these negative emotions associated with this happening again. Now, this had occurred several times in the past, maybe not necessarily at the foot of the stairs, but this had been an ongoing problem addiction that her husband was dealing with. And it had significant consequences for her. So on the emotional side of it, she decided not to go into a full-blown thing because she'd seen this before. This was not new. And the second layer of decision is that she was not going to go into manipulative behavior by rousting him up and yelling at him and trying to get him to get into line. And the third decision that she made was not to go into some compensating behaviors, to try to get him up so that she could help him get to bed and help him out in a different way to kind of compensate for just how messy this was. And instead, what she decided to do was to go find a blanket, and then because it was a cold night outside, and she didn't want him to get overly cold downstairs, so she just put the blanket over him, and then she stepped over him onto the stairs and made it up to the bedroom to have a decent night's sleep, which was, the best choice for her in her mind. And she was like, I wanted to get a decent night's sleep, so this is what I chose to do. And it was a real celebration for her afterwards. So healthy detachment, she didn't kick her husband or something negative that way, but she did exhibit some care for him by putting the blanket over him, and then went on with her life. So let's look at that at the national level, yeah? And I think of our dysfunctional national moment that we're in, and how do we protect ourselves? How do we show genuine love and concern for our country? And we can do both. That's the whole thing. Healthy detachment is a little bit of both. And so protecting ourselves, of course, the first thing is, bottom line necessity is staying out of our amygdala, right? We're going to be less easily controlled. We're going to be more effective and productive. The second thing I think about is conserving emotion. For my friend, she had been through all of those emotions over and over and over again. She's nothing new under the sun. She knew the tracks. She knew the ins and outs of all those feelings, and so she decided just not even go there and put a cap on it. When we look at what we're going to be moving into, and the outrage and the grieving and all of that stuff, there's going to be a point where, well, let me just put it this way. I just want to say, we all know this, but I just want to say it here on this forum, that the level of outrage does not equal the level of impact. Sometimes I'm a venter, so I like to vent, and sometimes need to vent. And so there's a level where outrage serves me a purpose. It serves me. But then there's also that point where outrage or venting does not give me the return on the energy investment that I put into it. So knowing that in order for me to have impact, I don't have to have maximum outrage. I don't even have to have any outrage. I can have zero outrage and have a major impact on whatever it is that, I've decided not to be outraged about. I know full well the seriousness of it, been through it, done it, know it, see it. It's repetitive, whether it takes one form or another. There's, you know what I'm saying? The outrage, things that we're going to be outraged about could be similar. And maybe it's a day that I just don't need to be outraged, and I can work to have an impact on it without spending the energy on this venting or whatnot. So concept is understandable. Practice is another thing, and knowing when that return on investment isn't going to be there is also important. So conserving emotion, conserving energy, and that's when we go Dune on where we spend our energy, how we spend it, and getting replenished on a regular basis before we hit burnout. One of the things I didn't mention was that sometimes if we let ourselves get burnt out, it takes a while it takes longer to get back into fighting form than if we were to have replenished ourselves consistently over time. Something to keep in mind, easier said than done. I can't say that enough, right? So, and then the last thing is that I thought about was just maintaining balance in life, which we all know we need to, and sometimes we can do well, sometimes some seasons we don't do as well. It is what it is. We do the best we can. How can we show love and genuine concern for our country? We can do that, and in fact, we have been doing that. It's all the things that we've been doing to date. These are good things. It's informing others and staying informed ourselves. It's investigating. It's it's all the things that we've been doing. It's not very poetic the way I've been saying it, but I wanted to move into the second point, which caught my eye. And I'll talk about this here because it's a concern that I have when I'm driving around. This is one of the things I think about, is preserving our institutional knowledge. It's the quality, the ethics, the integrity, the attitudes, the best practices that are in these institutions. I have no window into these worlds. I work in a whole different part of what makes America go around. So when I hear about norms in law and order, when I hear about cultures within these organizations, whether that's the DOJ, FBI, or over on the STEM side, EPA and NIH and all these things, or even some of the scientific, organizations and institutions that we have, I don't know what those cultures are. I don't know what those norms are. And I have to tell you, whenever somebody's from inside says, this is what's happening, and this is why it is so different than what is normal, when it's normal and typical and best practices, there is a discrepancy here, and this is what it really should look like, and this is what it should be. I need that. I still need that. I'm going to need that going forward. I'm just putting it out there to say that for me, that is life-giving to me, because I worry about us forgetting, what this looks like. I don't want us to forget what good conservatism looks like, even though I'm not a conservative right now. And I just don't want us to forget, because there is this sense of what we see as normative now, we lay onto what used to be, and we think it was normative then. I won't go into examples, but it's a thing, and it's something that I really do hope that we have a time capsule for, honestly. So preserving institutional knowledge, and also preserving social etiquette or social knowledge, community knowledge or social etiquette, public behaviors even. I mentioned before that, the traffic down where I live is even more aggressive than in Chicago, which is saying something. But when we're out in public, I think, oh my gosh, I have to have enough buffer inside of me when I go to the grocery store or anywhere else to make the hard choice to let somebody go first in line, or in traffic to let somebody go first in front of me in traffic, and or in a social situation, speaking, just sitting back and just letting somebody else speak and have their say. These are all important things. To exhibit kindness and integrity out in public, and in the midst of all the amygdala crap and all of the anger. I mean, I saw more of it today. It was pretty wild. And then I'll mention this. I don't want to say too much about it, but But this whole bullying thing, and when we see bullying, whether there's this classic level of bullying, to step in and to speak against it and speak up, push back on it. But I was watching something earlier today where Timothy Snyder and Rick Wilson were talking, and Timothy Snyder was talking about, in autocratic minions will bully people who talk about values of good, right, and true, any number of virtues, and they'll deride somebody for having that viewpoint as if those are bad things. And it's the standing up against this derision and this bullying that I think would be important to preserve. Preserve how much nicer we were 10 years ago. I mean, I don't know, but that's kind of that's what I worry about, I guess. So given this healthy detachment on the national level with national issues, I want to talk about how we can get to detachment. And there are people among us who are good at compartmentalizing things. They can look at an issue, look at a problem, look at aggravation, and then compartmentalize it and do something else. And then there are people among us that can't do that as easily. Now, it could be linked to brain types and how brain function. Neither one is better than the other because there are benefits to both, I would say. But what are some strategies regardless of where we fall on this continuum of ability to compartmentalize, what are some strategies that we can implement so that we can detach and be productive? So the first thing I was thinking of, I work from home most of the time, and if I need to detach, I can go and do reading and marking of documents and stuff like that up in another room or chair. I can put a quick load of laundry into the wash machine. I can take a walk. If it's after hours of work or on the weekends, I could do yard work, things like that. If you're into sports, which I'm not very gifted at sports, but playing sports with folks, those kinds of things really kind of knock us out of this emotional stuckness that we need to detach from, or emotional process. It might not be stuckness, but if we need to bracket this intensity, these are some strategies to detach. The other ways I was thinking of is just like engage in creativity, because creativity takes a different part of our brains, and whether you're good at it or not. I just want to say that, one of my hobbies is painting vintage furniture, and it really does. I mean, it was actually a really big gift, because when I would have a stressful day at work, I could start painting for an hour or two, and it would just take all of my brain and focus it on what my hands were doing, and that would allow me to just stop painting, and then I was free of the stress of the day and could just do other stuff at home. Connecting with others, relationship will often pull people into being able to detach from intensity. And then also, I'll bring this up because it's a season for me for puzzles, jigsaw puzzles. It's a tradition to do these over the holidays, and requiring focus to fit the puzzles together when I'm done with whatever time I spend on putting some pieces together. It again resets my brain and detaches me from whatever's going on beforehand, so that I can just kind of am in a completely different place, headspace wise, and can go about my business. So those are some strategies. Definitely not all of them. Take what you like, leave the rest, as we say. And I just want to kind of summarize by saying that to the extent that we can conserve energy and pace ourselves for this marathon or headwind that we're quickly moving toward and into, we're going to be more effective at preserving democracy. And when we look at effectiveness, what does that look like? And first and foremost, again, to just reiterate, underline, underscore, staying out of our amygdala. This is a bottom line baseline that we need to do. So we're not in our fight or flight mode. We're not in our freeze mode. We're not in a fawn mode where we're fawning over the people that make us afraid. We're not in this place. We're able to stay in our reason, in our thinking, and we're able to implement resolve rather than devolve into reaction. We can also outlast this power struggle better, this power struggle over what our country is going to look like, you know, and by outlasting it, I think in terms of attrition, we're going to have less attrition. And attrition to me has a few forms. A loss of time, loss of people in the fight, and loss of integrity in terms of, I think, primarily of acquiescence, you know, complying in advance. And when we're in this tired mode, when we're in this worn down mode, we're more likely to make the easy decision versus the best decision. Sometimes the easy decision is the best decision. Sometimes it's not. And instead of making a decision out of weakness, if we can maintain and conserve our energy, we're going to be able to make decisions out of our strength. We're going to be decided, we're going to be empowered, we're going to be strategic about what we do and what we decide not to do. So when we make a decision, it's going to be out of strength and planning versus out of weakness and random. I like to think of considered action. I like that phrase, considered action. And to the extent that we have the energy to plan and consider, I think our action is going to be more effective. So in closing, I just want to just say, I still strongly believe that light is stronger than darkness, that good is greater than evil, and that if we pace ourselves and we hit all these food stations and hydration stations along the way, if we give ourselves these breaks to restore energy, if we apply self-care, you know, all the things, that we're going to be in the best shape that we can be to defend and reestablish our democracy. So guys, these are my thoughts for today. And thank you for listening. I hope that everybody takes good care out there. I'll be working on that over here on this end. And I look forward to next time. And we'll see you guys then. Bye now.